Right, now we're switching back to the Q&A session, and let me start adding the speakers. So I hope that everyone has got enough time to prepare, just to prepare your questions. And now we are adding speakers back to the room. Hi, Gadi. Hi, Liran.
Hi, hello.
Sanne.
Hey there.
Hi, Sanne. Yay, everyone's here. Perfect. All right, we are good to go with the questions. And I have here a quick list of the ones that I managed to process from the chat, but I actually would like to ask everyone to ask their questions again. So one of the first question is actually, is it safer to use NPM or Yarn? Who wants to give a reply on that?
I'm happy to. I take that. I assume if the question is regarding security, that's probably pretty synonym. They both have today. They both have the same kind of like security controls. These things are like they have the checksum of the tarball that gets downloaded. By default, if you do npm install, you do get the npm audit thing. Kind of like vulnerabilities telling you that. So that's a nice feature. Yeah, the one thing I will say is that using npm or yarn by default without any kind of like specific config could lead to some issues. For example, we talked about get cookies as a malicious package. There are other kind of packages that what they had tried to do is, as you install the package, it would packages have the ability to define post-install scripts and pre-install scripts and so on. And so when you install a package, at that moment, by default, you specifically granted access to run arbitrary commands on behalf of the user running the npm install command. And so you probably want to be a little bit more conscious in terms of understanding that you can that this can happen. And so run it unless strictly required. Run the installs without running those lifecycle scripts.
Thank you, Liran. That's a good answer. We have the next one, and I guess that was addressed to Gadi. So what happened when you have to read and process a kind of file that you can't split in chunks, like XLS files?
So when you're working with stream, you're working with a low level. You can think of it of buffers types. And so if you need to modify it, yes, it could be an issue. Actually, I never tried to work with XLS, and I'm working with JSONs, and with JSONs you don't have this issue. Yes.
All right. Yeah, that sounds reasonable. Cool. So your best recommendation is actually to use JSON instead of XLS or even CSV, right?
Yeah, you can work with XLS, but just trim it without modify it, without the transform stream that I talked about, because you use trim and you just pass the data along the pipeline.
All right. Thank you. Our next question is, what is the best service for container orchestration? Who can give an answer to that?
I'm currently working with AWS ECS, but I know that Kubernetes it's far more popular around the world, and the ecosystem is very, 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 very big, and they have the support of Google, and you got all sorts of tooling from it, like Helm, and you can connect it to Istio, which is a proxy, and all sorts of tooling around Kubernetes. So I think Kubernetes is the future of Docker orchestrators, and I would recommend it.
Yeah, right. I don't want to take any sides specifically as well. I think no one here does. Do not make it into a flame wars. But I think, generally speaking, unless there's like a specific reason to do, a full-fledged Kubernetes deployment and managed or unmanaged, there are some middle grounds that you could do. Function as a service. So you have, cloud functions on Google, have AWS Lambda. These are like, just, you have to use the right tool for what you actually want to build. As a great example is how you can build applications that are stateless, event-driven and so on. If you do want to use containerized, like Docker with Node on it, you want to basically control the runtime and not that being governed for you by the platform itself. Like, if you use, Firebase functions or something like that, you can only use maybe Node 8 or Node 10 and so on. So if you do want to use and control the runtime, everything around it, there's Google Cloud Run. I just give it a container. You forget about the whole thing. How is it orchestrated and so on. There are other solutions. Heroku is one good example that can take that as well. So I think generally speaking, there's probably a pretty good support from the wider ecosystem. Probably regardless of which cloud platform provider you're actually gonna end up using.
Thanks, Liran. That's an amazing answer. We're getting more questions, and I can see people voting for them. So the top voted question is now, what should be the right way to go about detecting vulnerabilities in the dependencies one uses? Key pointers to keep in mind.
All right. So, dependency management is hard. So the fact that, people are conscious on doing that, that's already like, you have 50% of the solution right there. And that's an amazing, endeavor to make. Again, if you're using anything, by default, people use, maybe NPM, and there's the NPM, audit details, happening by default when you install something, or you do NPM audit. That's a great tool. That's a great way to, get started. I would say, the what I was showing in my talk on my slide in terms of, a package that did not have a fix for like an entire year, having millions of downloads. The thing that we've seen with Marked. So I think only Snyk has that, which is the ability to patch those dependencies. So what happens is we are really receptive to what happens in the open source community. And what we do is we create those patches. And so every Snyk user, that's for free, right? You can just sign up, use it, use the tool. So once you have the API token, just use it and you can patch the dependency. So even if it doesn't have a release, it was crucial for Marked, and which is like 4 years ago, and it was crucial for one of those Lodash prototype pollution dependencies that did not have a fix for like a week and about 9 days or so. And so I think those kind of tooling, once you are that aware of the problem, those kind of tooling kind of like helps you a bit further. Everything that you have today on GitHub, like GitHub opening, we depend about those kind of like PRs. That's great. That's a great way again to be stay up to date. So Snyk does that, Dependable does that. Choose whatever works for you, but that's a really good way to kind of like be already integrated with the fact that some issues can happen. What I haven't seen in any of them is what I was showing, I think, in my last slide, which is having that Snyk CI specific kind of run in terms of it can break or pass the build depending on whether we found something that is a problem. So I think even if you want to use something else, just make sure that you're building that into your pipeline, so you have something that is conscious for users to understand. The build failed. They do not need to go now into like Jenkins CI logs and see that NPM audit failed. Try to make it a specific webhook or as an example to kind of like make it easier.
That's amazing. Thank you, Liran. Okay, I think I've got a question. Yeah, I've got a question for Sanne. What do you think about CLIs, hyphenated name convention of file in the same project? Is this inconsistent or can be classified as more readable mix of names for the same project? What do you think about it?
In general, I think it's important to keep standards within projects and not to deviate from them willy-nilly, as like I say, because if you start to use them almost randomly, interchangeably, then people will just do whatever they want. And I think you should have some set of rules, like I'm not even sure if linters can take care of that, but usually what we do at Bankai that we just have one general linter with all the Bankai rules in it, and that's our default way of working. Yeah. You see, there was another part of the question. I can't remember that one.
All right, so the second part is this inconsistent or can be classified as more readable mix of names for the same project?
I don't know what is meant by that, to be honest.
All right, so as I understand, at least that's my understanding of the question, that people are asking, is that okay, for example, to mix a few different approaches in the same project just to, I don't know, make a little bit more diversity, or maybe the project is just so huge that it's really hard to proceed with one single standard or approach? Or what do you think about it?
Well, there are two problems there. One, diversity needs to have a purpose. If there's no purpose, why even do it? And if a project gets too big to manage, maybe the project just needs to be chopped up into pieces. Like for instance, the whole philosophy behind domain-driven design and micro front ends and stuff like that. That is maybe a better way to go with it than to try and manage that giant monolith.
Well, thank you. That's just I would say that that was a perfect advertisement of switching to the microservice architecture, guys. Thank you. Next question is related to Gadi. Any way to use worker threads for scaling streams horizontally?
Actually, good question. I think yes, you can use worker threads in order to horizontal scale streams, but you will have one problem because, as I said, streams are connected together, and I think you could use worker threads like if you have like your file is split into all sorts of parts, and then you can parse each part with a stream pipeline, and each part can use by a worker thread. If you want to do things more asynchronously, you can use message queues for this purpose. So you can parse the data and move it along in a message queue, and then you will have a consumer that consumes this chunk of data and process it forward. But since we're using Node, it's single-threaded, as you know, and it's really built for reading one thing and process it across the pipeline.
Okay, yeah, and thank you. We have a next question to Liran. Do you recommend some automated tool to make package patching in order to avoid vulnerabilities?
Yeah. So first of all, like I said before, like Snyk has that. That's free, so you can use that. There's another tool which I forgot its name. It's a generic one, and I mean, even the Snyk patches, it's basically like a Git diff that we make available for everyone who wants to use that, and like an S3 bucket, and the Snyk tooling just helps you patch it. And so at the end of the day, it's literally just running the patch command. There's another one that I forgot its name, but I have it on one of my repos. So if I can later comment, I'll add it. If not, just ping me on Twitter. I'll connect you with the person also who probably maintains that. So I'm happy to share it more. But there is another one that actually does those kind of patches. That's actually pretty usable, just like Snyk patches as well.
All right, thank you. I think we've got a few more top voted questions. So now the top voted question is back to Sanne. Do you have a standard style guide with the best practices about how to name things in a programming language? For example, all Boolean variables should start with is or something like that.
Definitely with is.
Well, there is an issue actually about the booleans. I just want to answer the question backwards because I was actually looking into that 2 days ago. I was dealing with property names for React, and apparently they have a thing in there that checks booleans. If the thing is a boolean, it checks if it starts with is or has, which I think is a very sensible thing, because if you want to do like a check on something, like if blah blah, it kind of makes sense. If you want to check the boolean, if something is, that kind of makes sense. And I know stuff is out there, but I just recently figured out that it is actually out there, and that is surprisingly already standardized. I myself do not have one of those, but there are some simple rules, like for instance, if something is array, call it a plural or something, like well, I just saw a shark. I have a toy shark in here. So if you have multiple sharks, you call it sharks, not shark. Something like that, or IDs. Then you at least know that it is a collection of something. And like with booleans, just point out that it is something or it isn't something. And yeah, I think in general, just name it in a way that it kind of already secretly explains that it is a string or a number. Something along those lines. But usually it kind of naturally makes sense what you do. But I don't have like a written document. Maybe I should make one. Just
that's actually an amazing idea.
Make one, call it the Clean Coder tree.
That would be great.
But still, I was looking up just while Sanne was speaking. The other package for if you want to patch something, it's called literally patch-package. So if you Google that up on NPM, you'll see it. I should say it's not related to security vulnerability. It's just a way to kind of like patch NPM dependencies instead of like, forking them or doing some changes, locally if you need to maintain those. So either you use that if you have the patch, or if you don't, just using the Snyk tooling will help you get patches for vulnerabilities. So one of those two options should get you set.
Okay, could you send me that after this QA? Just like send a link or something, because I'm curious.
I will. Yeah.
Okay.
Look at you, just replying to questions that are asked by different people that are listening to you. You can guys also find something to share between each other. That's amazing. Top question here is actually, will there be any links to the slides? So if you guys can share any link right now, that would be perfect. But anyway, we're gonna ask you. Okay, I've got one. So
that's for the package.
For the package. So I'm replying now to the stream. For everyone, we're gonna ask our speakers to share their slides after this stream, and we'll get prepared. We'll pack them most likely along with the videos so that they can be shared afterwards. I've got a question to Gadi. That's how to use streams to read base 64 images from a DB and send it to your frontend effectively.
Okay. So first of all, if this image is really, really big and you want to use streams for an image, you can do it. Mostly you would use streams for videos, I guess, and big files. But for images, you can use streams also. And there's you can use the FS model, the file system model in Node, and it has a built-in function that's called a create readable stream in the server. So you can read the data from the database and return it to your client. And in your client, if you use like a fetch API to request to the server, then the response of the fetch API is a readable string. So there's not you don't need to do anything, and you will get a readable string from the request. But then you can do whatever you want with it. You probably want to display it in the web or things like that.
Okay, thank you. Good answer. We've got one more voted for Liran. That's okay. It says quite interesting presentation. Thanks. How can now the question, and it sounds quite tricky. So the question is, how can we get more command lines or examples that we could use into our local project to learn to test and hack our own projects so that our users are not affected when the project is fully deployed? Does it make sense?
Yeah, I think so. So if I got it right, I think the key keyword there is learn, right? They want to learn how to protect themselves. It's a great question because I have an even more amazing answer for it, and that is the Goof app that I was showing you to do the to-do list and so on. That's on an open source repository on like the Snyk org on GitHub. So it has the exploit, it has the data, it has like everything you need to set it up. So it's like a good way to see kind of like what is the payload that someone needs to send to exploit one of those packages. So that's one example that you can use. Ping me if you have any questions, if you need help setting it up or anything. I'm happy to help. Besides that, there's also OWASP as an organization. I won't go into the whole what is OWASP in length, but in short, it's kind of like a group of people volunteering for creating projects and documentation and tooling to help people understand and learn web security. And so they have a series of projects called like anything Goat, and those are usually like purposely vulnerable projects. So like you can actually try them. And so one of them is called NodeGoat. So if you go to OWASP/NodeGoat, one word, if you'll just Google that, you'll find it first thing. You'll see it's like it's an already Node.js project, full, in and out, using Mongo, using all of those kind of like familiar tools that you'll use. And it already has built in all of those top 10, the OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities, the security risk that you should worry about. It's a good start to be conscious, learn about, what, how can an SQL injection happen in Node and in Mongo and so on. And so it has all of them already built in. I'm using that as well myself when I need to do like workshops and training and so on. And so it has even like video tutorials to help you understand how to like run the exploit code, and where is the fix as well in the code. It's already commented. So if you want to just take something and learn from it, like as a do-it-yourself kind of project, that's also like a really good start. So the Snyk/Goof repo and OWASP/NodeGoat are really good starts. If you need help with any of them, just ping me. I'll be happy to assist you.
All right, thank you. We have a quite interesting question. Next one is, what's better to use, pure SQL or query builders? Who would like to go ahead?
Oh my God.
Yeah, you can raise a finger, one or two, if you want to take a place in a queue, because I can see that all of you are quite smiling. So probably it could be a discussion.
Gadi, you want to go first?
I'm not sure.
I haven't touched SQL in years, so.
Yeah, but I think it's related to security, I guess.
Yeah.
What I understand, because that's why I laughed.
I mean, it's really anything. I mean, as pure SQL is, it has its traits, right? There are some things that, if you use query builders or ORMs, you're going to have performance kind of hits because you need to, the N+1 and, other kind of like aggregation, kind of like, something needs to understand what you need to pull. And that something is going to take, more kind of work behind the scenes to do that for you. And so I would guess if you need to do some kind of like, very complicated queries, some aggregations and so on, sometimes you might be tempted, and, rightfully so sometimes, to do those pure skills. But yeah, I mean, like Sanne says, I haven't done like like a pure SQL, like a select from something for years. And query builders and ORMs, which is or active records, kind of like patterns, are all kind of like siblings for whichever makes sense for you to choose from. But they're all there to kind of like make your life easier, as well as protect you, like Gadi said, from a security perspective. So you do not sleep an unprotected, concatenating a string from user input, that can come from anywhere, right? I mean, you think it's on the database record, but that database field that got 5 minutes ago, someone did like a post to some data, and that's how they got it, and then you concatenate that, without any proper escaping and so on. And so, keep in mind, SQL injections are still one of those very key vulnerabilities that always come up in like security reports, on web applications. So I would say, unless there's like a really good reason to use pure SQL, you probably want to avoid it.
All right, that sounds reasonable. Thank you. And I've got a question for Gadi. What are the prerequisites, or is there a specific task type which will be best to build with async iterations or streams? When is it better to use or not to use them?
Well, like I said in my talks, so in order to implement async iterator, it's really complex. You need to have a symbol of iterator and create the next method. So that's why async generators come to play in Node. So the syntax is pretty easy. You just yield the next value that you want to generate, and so the async generators help you create async iterators, and then you can do all sorts of things like I showed, like the 408 off loop, and I find it very useful when I'm just want to do some process of the data and iterate over it rather than move it on to the pipeline. So those are very cool features in Node. They are available since Node 10, like I talked about, and it's very useful. It's helping the developers create streams and work with streams properly.
Okay, thank you. We actually we've got probably our last question, and I'll address it to Sanne. The question sounds like this: I understand the value of naming a color primary over red, like using a theme schema. What will be a good way to name a list of, let's say, 30 colors where they don't fit in a theme schema and that it will grow?
Yeah. I'm assuming here, assumptions are dangerous, but let's do it anyway. That theme is more of a reference to like a UI component framework thing, and they tend to use names like primary, secondary, and stuff like that. But the reason behind that is that they tend to be generic in their nature, as in the components themselves are usually quite generic as well. But that makes sense because they need to fit all kinds of situations. But if you are building, in essence, your design system very custom for a specific client, then those themes really quickly start making no sense at all, because the names shouldn't actually be primary, secondary, and something like that, because that is just basic terminology used by the design team to define their color set. It's like a palette that they can pick from. But in the end, those colors will, like the red color might be used for 3 different things within that design, and each time that value is used, it's used for something different. So you should define it 3 times separately with 3 different names. Recently, we kind of did this actually, and you tend to come to like a almost standardized list of variables. So it's like if you want to talk about text colors and stuff like that, it could be body text, heading text, color, and field text. And sometimes you have settings that's slightly different in terms of color. And that is what you really should be aiming for, to make those names again meaningful. So as soon as that variable is applied to something, it makes sense what was actually the intention of applying that variable name.
Thank you. So guys, we have finished our Q&A session, and I would like to thank all our speakers for their time and attention. That was really amazing. And yeah, we
interrupt just one moment.
Yeah, sure.
Because I did in my presentation, I said like in this Q&A session, I would give the solution to my question that I asked in the presentation.
Mm-hmm.
And I do see it popping up in the Q&A thingies. And it was basically a UI component, which showed some introduction text and a heading. That's it. And what we ended up calling it was a brief explainer item.
Mm-hmm.
And that way it was actually quite generalized. It said nothing about its shape. So nothing like block or box or something like that. And there was an extra bit about it. And that was the item thing, because we noticed that the intention was that was always part of a collection of those items.
Okay.
So that's why the item bit was on there.
Okay. Thank you, Dan.
Sorry about that.
No worries. No worries. Sure.
I see people asking about it, and I do want to give the answer.
That's great to see the attitude. You know, usually speakers are actually divided into two parts: the ones that keen to give more and more answers and even to extend the time, and the ones that are looking at the clock. So I'm happy to see that during this conference there was no one was looking at the clock. It's actually more a little bit harder to even split. So that's why we have so short breaks. We never had actually today a full break of even 10 minutes, which is amazing. So thank you, everyone. You presented the Node.js from really different positions, from the security point of view, from the streams, from the naming, which was actually an expected thing for myself as well, at least. And thank you for your cooperation. Thank you for your contribution to the world Node.js community. It's definitely not the last time that we are seeing and working into that. I wish you good luck. Thank you. Have a nice evening.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. All right. So guys, now we are switching to the next part. There will be the second track. It will start in 6 minutes. At this time, my shift is over. I'm gonna pass it to my fellow colleague Dima. He's gonna keep the night shift, and I hope you're gonna enjoy that.